Yes.
Good, great. Um, this is what your district has looked like for the past 4 years in terms of accidents. If you look at the accident statistics here, it shows tail swing as only a couple of accidents, but there's more to the story than that. Typically, the only ones that I list that way are the ones that listed as that in the description. If you look at that first category, which is intersection ROW failure, that stands for right of way, uh, where you have intersection accidents. What you see there is 7 accidents, which are your most costly accident type. About half of those accidents, or in this case, 4 of those accidents, probably had some component of tail swing involved in how the accident occurred. If you look down a little bit further to the struck parked and the struck stationary object statistic, you can see a high number of accidents there, and more than half of those probably also had some element of tail swing involved in those accidents, because what you see is mirrors and damage to construction or maybe yard equipment, personal property, I'll just say, or of other individuals involved in those claims. So you can see out of all of the money spent on these types of claims, which is well over $300,000, if you average it out over the course of the last almost 4 years, the district has probably averaged close to $50,000 or $60,000 in terms of claims involving tail swing, or that half tail swing is one of the components of why the accident occurred. Now, to put that in perspective, is that's the paid amount by the insurance. Statistics, what statistics show in terms of looking at the information, for every dollar you lose, there's a uninsured component to that for insurance cost increases, for damage that's not covered by insurance, and other things that have to do with the driver and workers' comp and some of the other stuff. What happens is you have a 4-to-1 component. So, and as much as a 10-to-1 component in terms of the actual cost to the district for those accidents, which makes a 50 or 60,000 more like 250 to maybe, probably $500,000 in terms of cost over the past almost 4 years in terms of claims to Bryan ISD in terms of the uninsured costs. This shows what we paid, and we're going to pay every claim no matter what. But there's an element to every accident that's that shows that the district spends more money than what the actual insurance component of the claim is. Okay, I just want to, uh, I guess, take this a little bit further in terms of talking about the tail swing part of this again. This is the demonstration of the tail swing. All right, were you guys able to see that okay? Now, something similar happens with the transit bus, but it's a little bit different. So we'll see what that looks like.
We are going to be working on right side tail swing for a transit style bus, which has a shorter overhang, approximately 9 feet, than would be conventional for a trailing or overhang bus. We can tell from the difference in the shorter overhangs that the bus won't swing out quite as far as the right hand side. Martin starts the aircraft, engages the gear, releases the brake, checks the spoolers, makes a full lock left, and proceeds forward when it's safe to do so. Take a look at the tail swings of the transit and conventional buses. Keep in mind the differences in their tail swings. And remember to factor in these differences when operating these buses. Next, we will examine a left tail swing on a transit style bus. Left hand side.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I had the mute somewhere.
Oh, okay. All right. From my understanding and talking to Mr. Gates, I understand you guys only have a few transit style buses. I just included the information to kind of show the differences between the two styles of bus. And you can see that you need a probably greater clearance for a conventional bus than would you for a transit style bus. But it's just to kind of show that there is a difference, and there's a difference probably for most different sizes and classes of buses too. Okay, some contributing factors that I've seen in terms of what I review all the time for accidents that happen. A lot of times it has to do with factors that I'd say the driver has control over, like poorly adjusted and or dirty mirrors, the windshield, the headlights, lack of adequate awareness of what they're driving, the driving speed and proximity to fixed or moving objects on the roadway and off the roadway for that matter. Distractions. Kids on the bus can be distracting with all the stuff that's going around you all the time, the noise, some of the things they do, and some of the environmental factors like the lighting and the weather and road conditions, other drivers, crazy drivers. Out of all of those things, you'll notice that the driver has control of the most important factors. And when you let that fifth object into your vehicle, somebody else is controlling what happens to you and not you. So it's critical to understand your bus in terms of what it, how it rides and how it turns, because you have control of most of the factors that contribute to accidents that occur within your bus. All right, we're going to do a quick review. You guys want, you can type in the answers to the questions. They're all true, false. So here's the first question. The overhang on all school buses is approximately the same regardless of whether they are transit or a conventional bus. Give you a second there. Answer to that question is false. As we talked about, there are differences, some not so subtle in terms of how big they are, in terms of how the two buses operate in a turn. If a conventional school bus is 18 inches away from a problem object, there will be sufficient room to clear the problem object during a full lock turn. Answer again is false. Remember what we were talking about. I think the guy that's narrating the video mentioned 3 feet would probably be the necessary clearance, minimum clearance that you need to make sure that you don't strike, your tail swing doesn't strike something, some object or some person for that matter. When making a right-hand turn, tail swing occurs next to the left rear bumper. That's true if you're turning right. Okay, the length of the bus determines the amount of tail swing. Answer
like
there. Beg your pardon?
It looked like they were saying true.
No, it's actually false. I had it over. I had the screen share thing over the thing. You couldn't see it. All right, let's move on. Next, we're going to talk about the proper steps to making what some people call the perfect or the correct right turn. Some of the critical points to making sure that the turn goes smoothly and there are no issues with accidents or something else is the entire bus clears the curb at the corner. And that takes me to something else that I talk about. It's called reference point turning. That's not the topic today, and maybe a topic for another day, where you kind of pick an object inside your bus that you can line up with on the outside of your bus to know when that point is to make sure the bus clears where you want to start making a turn. And the other thing is the bus stays in its own lane of traffic as much as possible. Now, here are the steps that I kind of outline in terms of what this is. And if you guys are interested in this, I can send this to Mr. Gates in kind of a handout. I think some of this is kind of straightforward, but some people like, looking at the information and reading it to get a greater understanding of it. But if you're making a safe right turn, what you need to do is move in the far right lane, turn on your signal, check all your mirrors for traffic surrounding your bus, slow to less than 10 miles an hour. Put your hands in the correct position on the steering wheel. You should be at least 4 feet from the curb or parked vehicles. Keep your wheels straight. Check all your mirrors for pedestrians before starting your turn. And when you can see straight down the curb line for the lane you're turning into, start turning your steering wheel in that full lock position. And as you begin your turn, you check the left side mirror for tail swing. You check tail swing again in the middle of your turn, and you make the adjustments that you need to make sure that you don't hit anything. If you're making that right turn and there's a vehicle that's too far over, you may need to make an adjustment so you don't hit that vehicle come in the opposite direction. And you want to stop if you're about to come in contact with a problem object or something that could cause damage to your bus. Again, you check the right mirrors and complete your turn, keeping the bus or the steering wheel in the full lock position, and then you straighten your wheels and check all your mirrors upon you completing your turn, and that helps you make sure that you're okay and you didn't do any damage during your turn. A lot of this does not happen. Most of it should, just about every time you make a turn. I know there are other things happening in your bus that makes it sometimes dubious to be able to do it exactly the way you want to, but these are considered the steps that you need to make to make the safe, or what they call the correct or perfect right turn. Talk a little bit about left turns. Kind of the same thing here. You want to make sure you got adequate clearance to objects on your right side, on the right side of the bus, prior to making your turn. As I told you before about the accident, I don't know if you guys heard me talk about the accident involving the motorcycle. I think we may have been gone. I'll just repeat it just for emphasis. I deal with a district that recently had an accident involving a bus turning left from the inside position of a two-lane turn, and the motorcycle was in the outside position, and the tail swing of the bus hit the motorcyclist and critically injured him. And that claim is currently somewhere in the $500,000 range for that driver, because the rider of the motorcycle eventually died. So you can see some of the stuff that we're talking about here can have critical consequences if the turn is not executed correctly, or if it's not done in a way that presents the least amount of risk in terms of to the bus and to the people that are on the roadway with you. But this is what I consider the steps to making a safe, or what some people like to call the perfect left-hand turn. You turn on your signal, you move in the far left lane. If there are two turning lanes, you want to use the right lane of the two. You want to check all mirrors for surrounding traffic, for stuff around your bus. Again, you want to slow to 10 miles per hour or less. Put your hands in the correct position on the steering wheel. Keep your wheels straight. Bring the front of the bus to the center of the intersection before starting the turn, and don't move until the intersection, until the traffic in front of you has completed the turn. I see a lot of times where you'll have a passenger vehicle and sometimes buses. They'll pull out in an intersection. They've waited a long time. They don't want to wait for another light change, so they'll pull out in that intersection far out there as that light, and that light changes and catches them out there when it's not a protected turn. That's not a safe thing to do. You want to check all your mirrors for pedestrians and other vehicles before you start your turn, and then you start watching for problem objects while you're making your turn. Check your right side mirror for tail swing. Check again in the middle of your turn and make any adjustments that you need, and slow down if you have to, or even stop if you think the tail swing is gonna hit something on the outside of the lane. And I'll show you something in a second. One of the examples I'll show you where that almost happens. And you complete your turn and you check your mirrors again like the first time. And I want to make a final point about one thing. Proper mirror adjustment matters. It really, really matters, because you notice all of the procedures that we talked about in executing a left or right turn started with making sure you check your mirrors. If your mirrors are out of adjustment, chances are you may miss something that's critical to the safety of you making that turn. What the mirrors provide drivers with the ability to do is to see around the bus, see what the rear axle is doing in a turn, and eliminate the blind spots around the vehicle as much as they can be eliminated, and to back up safely should you have to. And now let's talk quickly about the mirror adjustments. The inside flat mirror inside the vehicle permits the driver to view the top of the rear window at the back of the bus. It permits the driver to see all the students, including the top of the students right behind the driver. An adjustment permits the driver to see somewhat outside the passenger side windows, but not below the window level. The cross view mirrors, and I'll show you a diagram here in a second, the adjustment permit the driver to see the entire front area in front of the vehicle, I guess, as well as the front bumper. And if you look, if you go back and look here, what it says is spots 1 and 2. That's what we're talking about. Those two spots on both of those. That's both a conventional and a transit style vehicle. And you notice my tips say if your mirrors are adjusted properly, the blind spots in front and along both sides of the bus are mostly eliminated, but you still have the blind spots behind the bus. And if you come to a situation, and I say this to new and inexperienced drivers, if you cannot adjust your mirrors, you need to talk to your supervisor, somebody that can help you get them adjusted properly, because mirror adjustment in driving a bus is critical to the safe operation of the bus. Talk about a couple of the other two mirrors, like the upper left and right flat mirrors. What it allows the driver to see is the 4 lengths behind the bus, on both sides. The sides of the bus, uh, the rear tires touching the ground. On some of the older buses, it may be impossible to see the tires touching the ground, but you should be able to see the rubber skirting around the wheel well of the bus. Those outside are those lower spot of convex mirrors, and that's, if you look, that's 3 and 6 on that diagram, as the other one was uh, 4 and 5. What they do is they're located below the outside flat mirrors and the adjustment for Mr. Driver to see the entire area to the rear of the bus, and they allow the driver to see at least one traffic lane on either side of the bus. All right, any questions? All right, here are a couple of examples I want to show you in terms of, I guess these are kind of what you'd call real life situations involving tail swing prevention. This involves a stop sign and having to recognize the clearance from that stop sign so you don't hear it when you have to make that tight right that tight left hand turn. We skipped it.
Today we're going to talk about parking the bus. Another example to this.
All right, let's try this again. We keep skipping it. All right.
Let's turn to our next example. How to judge tail swing when approaching a problem object. In this case, Martin is approaching an intersection. His problem object is the stop sign. Let's follow Martin as he makes the left turn. Pay attention to the right tail swing of the bus. There are several lessons to learn from this exercise. Remember, during the training exercise, Martin mentioned that the bus was calculating the clearance to the optimal tail speed. He then measured the distance so the driver would understand exactly how much room would be required. Notice that in the previous example he just used, as the bus's tail swing takes place, it's a snug fit, but there is sufficient distance to clear the stop sign. Also, and this is really one of the most critical factors, Martin was able to correctly judge the clearance while looking into the flat mirror. Don't forget, judgment and knowing how to estimate when there is sufficient distance when making the turn is critical to the driver's ability to make good decisions. Another factor is the driver was aware that the conventional bus had a longer overhang, and he took that into consideration. All of these factors were used by Martin when he successfully navigated the turn.
All right, that's one example involving a stop sign. Notice the big deal about the judgment issue.
Example, how to judge tail swing when approaching a problem object. In this case, Martin is approaching.
All right, let's do the next one here.
Today we're going to talk about parking a bus in parking stalls.
This happens a lot.
Challenge for drivers who have parking and are next to a stall. Buses are often parked very close together. This can and presents challenges for the driver approaching tail swing while next to a parking stall. Here are some of the hazards involved when driving in a parking stall. Some of the easier ways to do it. Let's go back to the bus and do one demonstration. One of the most common occurrences for school bus drivers is parking and entering in a stall. In this demonstration, Martin is going to make a full left walk as he leaves the stall. Watch what happens. Okay, we're going to demonstrate here some of the hazards in pulling out of a parking stall. Start on the left, select your gear, notice the brake, then immediately do a pulled off turn. As you can see by this demonstration, failure to factor in tail swing can easily lead to a turnover. In this next example, Martin will demonstrate the correct method for leaving a parking stall. Start the bus.
All right. TPS is played for a lot of bus mirrors where people haven't come out of those stalls. All right, one more.
It's another example is what's large vehicles rapidly skipping out into the train car. So the bus driver has decided to make a turn. Once entering the second lane, the driver realizes the tail swing of the bus may grab over the truck. Drivers are warned to avoid seats within traffic lights. Remember, entering an intersection is important and making a turn. Plan ahead. Don't get caught in a situation like this.
All right, those are the three examples. Okay, quick review here. We're almost to the end. First question. When two buses are parked side by side in a parking stall, the driver should make a full lock turn of the steering wheel at the beginning of the turn. True or false? Answer is false. You make that full lock turn like it showed on that example, there's a good chance you're going to hit that bus parked next to you, depending on how far away it is. If the driver of a conventional style bus is 18 inches away from a problem object, there will be sufficient room to avoid hitting the object. That's false. Remember, we said at least 3 feet in the video in terms of how much space you need to avoid hitting the object. According to the video, if the driver of a transit style bus is 18 inches away from a problem object, there will be sufficient room to avoid hitting the object. In this case, that's probably true because the conventional bus has a tighter turning radius and a lesser tail swing because of the length of the end of the bus, of the amount of the bus at the between the back axle and the end of the bus. I knew I'd get it out in a second. It is a responsibility of other drivers to make sure they stay clear of a school bus when making a turn because buses are large and need more room to maneuver than cars or trucks. That's false. You're responsible. Like I said, in terms of the motorcycle accident that I was talking about earlier, the bus driver never really used the mirrors, never saw the motorcyclist was next to him, and that contributed to that accident. And the last time I checked, that accident was at a $500,000 and counting. All right. I want to summarize a little bit of what we talked about. Some of the key tips to the prevention of tail swing related accidents include, number one, you want to always drive defensively. That means you are driving to save time, money, lives, in spite of the actions of other drivers around you. The minute you don't drive defensively, somebody else is helping you operate your bus, and it's not somebody inside that bus. You want to exercise good judgment and plan ahead when making turns. And it is better to err on the side of caution than to get back and say, you know, I thought I could make it, but I guess I couldn't. And that's evident by the accident. Take time and learn and understand the operational characteristics of whatever bus you're driving. It's critical to making sure that you fully recognize some of the hazards associated with what you're doing when you drive, and in particular tail swing and prevention of tail swing accidents. You want to ensure all your mirrors are adjusted before leaving the bus yard. A lot of districts that I deal with, they've set up mirror check stations where the bus goes through there and kind of gives you objects and cones, either on the ground or cones, where you can adjust all your mirrors correctly before leaving the yard to make sure they're properly adjusted. Again, like I said earlier, if you can't adjust your mirrors to see all the things you're supposed to see, you should talk to your supervisor. And practice, practice, practice. Very few, if any, driving skills, of any kind of skills really, ever mastered without some level of practice to make sure you understand what you think you do is very critical, especially for new drivers, for people, this is your first year driving a bus. You really want to make sure you understand how your bus operates under certain conditions. And the only way you can do that is practice driving techniques. Now, I don't know how you'd set that up within your district or how you do that within your training, but that is critical to making sure that you can do that. All right, that is the end of my presentation. what I'd like to know is if there are any questions that I might be able to answer for you guys. I hope it was enlightening or entertaining and it provided you with information that you may need to keep you safe. But does anybody have any questions that I might be able to answer while I'm still here? Trying to stay on time with you guys. I know we only had an hour, and I hope we didn't take that too fast. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. I would love to have been there with you. So one thing, my jokes go over better in person than they do online. I'm figuring that out very quickly, just about anything I've done here of late. And